Okay, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Mark Jones, Vice Chair of the committee, because Paul Wynne couldn't attend today. So housekeeping, we are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I ask you to please ensure your mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This meeting is held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure that they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on any item if you have not heard all of the debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak, so as those listening know who is speaking? I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. So if we go to Councillor Clark first.
Steve. Ted Clark, Breaksdale, Colin and Sutton, 3-member ward.
Steve Davenport, St Martin's, St Martin's, Duddleston, Duddleston Heath. I'm nearly Tetchel.
Edward Towers, Wen Rural and Wixel.
Mike Isherwood, Oswestry West. Jeff Allen, Ellesmere Urban. Gary Burgess, Bagley.
Alex Wagner, Baybrook.
Yes, okay, and we've got officers.
It's Jane Raymond, Senior Planning Officer.
Philip Molyneux, Principal Planner.
Idris Iqbal, Solicitor.
Excellent, thank you very much. So item 1 is apologies for absence. I have apologies received from Councillor Joyce Barrow, and Steve Davenport is substituting, Councillor Paul Wynne and Councillor Vasworth. Okay, item number 2 is the minutes, to confirm minutes from meetings held on the 26th of April 2022 and the 12th of May 2022. Anybody opposed? Gary, Councillor Burgess proposes it and Councillor Vincent seconds it. All in favour? Thank you. Section 3 is public questions, and we haven't received any public questions, so we shall move to item 4. Has anybody on the committee got any disclosable pecuniary interests?
It's true. I worked for McDonald's back in the 90s and 2000s for the corporation, but it's still a pecuniary interest. I suppose members now aware that I was a member of staff for the corporation.
Okay, so if we want to know about chicken nuggets, we're not the man. Mr. Clark, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Item 6, it's part of the extended ward that I am a part of. Unfortunately, I've drawn the short straw to actually make a statement on behalf of my 2 colleagues who are both much more in the vicinity of Dragon King, if you'll permit me at the time. So an interest in number 6.
Will Councillor Clark need to move out of the room when the voting takes place, or how does?
What is the?
Is it 3?
It's part of this will go, yes, he will.
Yeah. So you have to say your piece and move away. Councillor Clark.
Move back.
Yeah. Thank you.
Having in the future.
So item 5, Rowley's House, Barker Street, Shrewsbury. Planning number 22/00817/LBC.
Thank you.
The officer, Mr. Molyneux, will now proceed to tell us how exciting it is and what to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is for the listed building consent for internal and external alterations in association with replacement and repair of infill panels and repair to the associated timber frame affecting a Grade 2 star listed building at Rowley's House, Barker Street in Shrewsbury. There are no updates in this application. The application is presented to committee as the application is made by Shropshire Council in connection to land also in the ownership of the council. And the development concerned is not in connection to a direct statutory service and therefore needs committee consideration. Application site is outlined in red. Closer view of the application site. The floor plan of the building. Section details. Photographs of the existing building on Barker Street, Shrewsbury, I'm sure all of you are aware of. And then the location of the proposed repairs is outlined in red. There's a red square box on where there it is. Also, it's indicated there, and that's the area for the repairs. And then to show you internally, it's marked with numbers where where the alterations would take place. So I'll go back to the top first. And as I said, that's better. There's the red. That's the area where the repairs are required. And then back to the internal ones, which I've got 2 or 3 here of. There's another one there. And that's the final photograph. This is considered a straightforward application for repairs to what I've indicated is a Grade 2 star listed building, to which both Historic England and the Council's conservation team support the works as proposed. The Town Council also supports the application, and there are no objections raised. In conclusion, it is recommended that the application is approved as per conditions as set out in Annex 1 attached to the committee officer's report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my presentation on this application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Molyneux. I think it's fairly straightforward. I don't think they're building back better. I think they're building it as it's supposed to be. So, Councillor Vince Hunt.
Thank you. Is that on? Can anybody hear me? Unfortunately, turned red now. Okay, don't get excited. Yeah, it's fairly straightforward, this one. I remove the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark.
Councillor Jones, if I could just make a comment, the one thing missing off the presentation from the officer is the hideous scaffolding that's been around it for the last 12 or 18 months, which is a little sad. This is presumably the photographs taken pre-COVID, I should think. I'm really pleased, and I fully support the proposal. If nobody does know, because everybody else is strange, there's not many from Shrewsbury here. Rowley's House figures on an old historic Great Western Railway poster, which was pushed all over waiting rooms throughout England, inviting people to come to Shrewsbury. The Rowley's House was the main focus.
Thank you for the history lesson.
Thank you. Anytime.
We've had proposed Councillor Towers.
I don't know if the second, but I second it.
Okay, well, it has been
Third, fourth.
yeah, I think everybody's happy. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It says in the application that some of the scaffolding will be removed. Is there a reason why all of it can't be removed?
I am aware there's scaffolding around here at the moment, and I was under the impression that it'll be removed once the repairs have taken place.
Okay, so everybody's happy. Should we take a vote? So everybody who's happy with it, raise your hands. That's unanimous. Can't see Mr. Isherwood. Have you got your hand?
You got to go through them, ask them to say yes.
Oh, you want to do it individually? Okay, we're going to do an individual vote.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got a proposer and a seconder to grant listed building consent, subject to conditions set out in Appendix 1 in accordance with officer's recommendation. I'll go through the list and just say whether you're for or against. It's easy now, unless you probably just write the names down.
Oh, yeah, true. It's unanimous, isn't it? If you do a vote, is it unanimous?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unanimous.
Turn off smelling for you.
Well done, councillor.
I do all agree.
I agree. Thank you very much. Okay, next item up, and my computer's disappeared, so, next item is the, so get that back up. Is number 6 is the Dragon King Old Pottsway, Shrewsbury, planning number 22/00252/full. And the officer who's going to do it is Jane Raymond.
Thank you. This application is for the erection of a new restaurant building to replace the existing restaurant building most recently occupied by a Chinese restaurant and takeaway. The proposal offers a drive-through facility in addition to the option to sit in and eat. It is proposed to be open 24 hours. Due to some alterations to the car park and the provision of the new building and drive-through lanes, the proposal requires the removal of 29 trees. None of these are category A trees and only 6 are category B. 14 are category C trees that are of low quality with a short life expectancy, and 8 are poor quality category U trees, which are recommended for removal regardless of the development proposals. The revised plans include the planting of 17 new trees, and the tree officer considers that this provides more than adequate and satisfactory compensated tree planting for the trees to be removed. The Town Council that originally raised concern regarding the loss of trees has been consulted on the revised proposal and is now happy with the proposal from a tree and landscape perspective. The Town Council's latest comments are available in full within the schedule of additional letters, and she's noticed that the Town Council has also withdrawn their concern with regard to the potential for littering. A litter management plan has been submitted and a condition is recommended to ensure that this is adhered to. The Town Council, however, maintains their objection regarding sustainable travel and continue to express concern regarding traffic implications and 24-hour opening. With regards to sustainable travel, the proposal is a replacement restaurant close to the town centre and other services and facilities in the locality. And whether or not a drive-through facility is provided, the restaurant is accessible by a variety of means, and there is the potential for combined trips. Highways have no objection to the proposal with regards to car park capacity, traffic generation, and/or impact on congestion in the local area or the highway network. There has also been some objection from local residents to the proposed 24-hour opening and the potential for noise and disturbance in the locality. Due to the distance of the site from the nearest residential properties in Scott Street and Rock Street, it is considered that any traffic and visitors at night would not result in any significant adverse impact on residential amenity. It is considered that the proposal would not result in noise or disturbance to residents during the early morning opening hours, and therefore it is not considered necessary for planning conditions to restrict opening hours, as this would not meet the tests for conditions. The premises do in any case require a licence to open after 11 PM at night and before 5 AM, so that can be controlled by regulatory services. A noise and odour survey has been submitted and regulatory services are satisfied that the proposal would not impact on local amenity with regards to noise and odour from cooking and extraction equipment. The officer's recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the committee report. I'll just quickly go through the plans. This is the site location plan. Yep.
Been an IT hitch with the live link, so Dawn has asked if you can unshare the presentation and then reshare it.
Oh, okay, so what do I do then?
Click on the unshare.
We're just having a technical hitch.
Oh, something happened then. Oh, okay. Is my thing been broadcast?
Yeah. Then we've unshared, reshare, and then click on the PowerPoint that you want to share, and it should be fine.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So this is the proposed site plan, showing the footprint of the restaurant and the drive-through lanes going around the rear with the Cineworld to the south. This is the proposed building. And that's the existing Dragon King restaurant with Cineworld next to it. Front of the Dragon King restaurant to be demolished. That's round the side, showing some of the car park and some of the trees that are to be removed. That's further around the side and the back, The very mature hedgerow and trees all along here with the Rebrook, the other side, that's all to be retained. None of that boundary treatment is being removed. That's the rear where the drive-through area will operate around that part.
That's the back.
Yeah. And then this is just to show the site in wider context, that it's predominantly within the leisure park here, with Nando's. It used to be a Burger King drive-through many years ago. That's the cinema. There's a pub restaurant next to it here, commercial premises, and you can see that Rock Street and Scott Street are some distance away from the entrance and the restaurant itself. And that's just an aerial view of the same, showing the location here. That's the building to be removed and replaced. That's it, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we've got no against, no one to speak on it apart from Ted, who's the local member, and he's going to read statements out from Councillor Tony Parsons and Councillor Rosemary Dartnell. I presume he's going to read it in the Scarlet Ted Clark.
In inimitable style. Indeed, thank you, Chair. First one I've got is from my colleague Tony Parsons. Bear with me, please. It's not too bad. Having read the documents submitted and being aware of the history of the site, which is in my electoral ward, I am neutral with regards to this development, but I believe more stringent conditions are required should this application be approved, in particular in relation to licensing conditions, increased traffic, and also the impact on the trees on the site. There's a history of a previous drive-through facility on this large site. It was not at the Dragon King beaten track section of the site. A drive-through Burger King facility was in operation for a number of years, now occupied by Nando's. This facility did not operate on a 24-hour basis. I strongly disagree with the conclusions in paragraph 653 that conditions on the opening hours are unnecessary. This site is very different from the McDonald's site at Mill Brace and on the Battlefield Road, which have no local residents close by. The Dragon King site, which is to be converted by this application, sits less than 20 metres from the residence, as well as Rock Street and the streets that lead on from there. Having finished their shift in operating the public house until 11, it is unlikely they would appreciate activity at the drive-through during the early hours of the mornings, the licensees. I would suggest that there is a need to restrict opening hours on this site between 7 and midnight, with the premises being closed for the remainder of the night. I've seen no evidence to suggest that the two sites already operating cannot cope with demand between midnight and 7 a.m, whatever their capacity issues may be for the rest of the day. The petition signed by local residents clearly shows unease at the proposed length of the opening hours. The loss of trees from the car park are only partially offset by the planting proposed on the boundary of the site with Old Potts Way. More should be done in this regard, with additional planting surrounding the car park and drive-through. The officer's report raises no issues with regard to noise, litter and antisocial behaviour, but I believe all three of these will need to be carefully monitored, with action taken by restaurant staff should there be problems during the course of opening. Thank you for your patience. Tony Parsons. Okay. I'll move on to number 2. This is from Councillor Rosemary Dartnell. Having studied the original and amended applications in conjunction with the history of the site in general, the current trading arrangements of retailers nearby and considered the number and content of objections submitted through the planning portal, I must highlight concerns relating to licensing conditions, potential increased traffic and the subsequent impact on neighbouring residents, removal of trees and planting replacements. Opening hours and traffic impacts. The request for 24 hours is discordant with the retail park as it currently operates and the residential area in the immediate vicinity. Currently, Asda and Nantando's close at 10, the latter closing a little later, and the cinema closes around 10:45, 11:15, depending on the programme. After the 10:30, the area is quiet. Residents concerns are mostly related to the likelihood of increased traffic during late hours. Many homes in the Rock Street, Rhea Street area close by are terraced and close to the road, and this is a real concern. Allowing 24-hour trading will change the nature of the retail park and its neighbourhood in a negative way for residents. The meal breaks McDonald's site, less than 2 miles away, already operates on a 24-hour basis with no residential areas close by, and if permission is given for this application, it should be on hours restricted to a maximum of 7 AM to midnight. I note the amended tree planting and provision to ensure trees are cared for in the first years that are planted in the first years that meet the approval of the tree officers. However, the application requests the removal of a greater number of trees than will be planted, with a net result of a reduction in the number of trees on the site. It would be preferable to retain at a minimum the number of existing trees. Yours sincerely, Rosemary Dillon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I think you need to close the towards the back of the room.
Can I not sit quietly in a corner?
Can you sit quietly in there, or can we?
I'll have nothing to do with this.
No, the code does require members to
Sit at the back.
Yes, just not the road.
Sit quietly.
That was difficult.
Face the wall.
As a due, Mr. Chairman, I shall move to the back.
Thank you,
Quietly.
Continue back on.
And I will turn my microphone off. That's my officious colleague here has just indicated. Thank you.
Excellent. So I'll bring the officer back in to answer some of those queries by Councillor Dartnell and Councillor Parsons.
I won't respond to the statements just being read out now. I'll answer any questions you might have, but just want to point out that one of the conditions needs an update. Number 6, it needs to add to it that it's prior to any above ground works commencing on site, so that the recommendation is updated to include that amendment to condition 6.
Sorry, can I have it repeated? I can't.
Condition 6 says the external materials shall be as indicated on the appropriate. Okay. It's about the materials. It says it shall be as indicated on the approved drawings and within the submitted planning statement, or in accordance with details to be submitted to and approved in writing by the local authority. It needs adding on the end of that prior to any above ground works occurring or commencing on site. So just to note that the recommendation is now with that slight amendment to that condition.
And Jean, I suggest point out where the residential.
Oh yes, I did point out before, but one of the statements expressed concern about the proximity to residential properties, or the nearest residential properties are here in Rock Street and Scott Street, which is some distance away to where customers will be visiting the restaurant here. Yeah, so.
Excellent.
Have you got any queries on the statements that were read out, or you need answering?
I will put that to the floor for now, and Councillor Elner has said he wants to raise a point.
Please, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted some clarity. The application says erection of a drive-through restaurant following demolition of existing restaurant. It doesn't actually say open 24 hours. So can we approve this and then agree a 24-hour period or shorter period or whatever afterwards, or is the application?
No,
gone
the
in 24
application
hours?
is for a restaurant that's got seating to sit down and eat, or to drive through to pick up your meal. They want to be open 24 hours, and provided we don't put any conditions on restricting the opening hours, they can be open 24 hours. But obviously, if there's any problems in the future, they do need a license to operate after 11 o'clock at night and before 5 in the morning. So if we don't, my recommendation is that not to impose any conditions, because I don't think it's necessary to restrict the opening hours, because I'm not quite clear what the harm, although it's complete harm for residents, I'm not clear myself what that would be in planning terms that would justify restricting the hours. But so once it was up and running, if it was problematic for any reason, the licence should be able to restrict the hours if it was considered necessary.
Thank you. Can I come back on that? So in effect, then we could approve it and restrict the hours if we wanted to. I'm just concerned that instead of precedent for Nando's and McDonald's and so on, that they're going to jump on the bandwagon and say, well, why can't we do that? And my other concern is it does state on here about possibilities of residential streets being used as shortcuts, and that would affect people when they sleep at night.
The shortcuts is just a comment from one of the neighbours. It's summarising the report. I remember writing the report and summarising all the comments, because I read them all and put a summary. And I think that's something that already exists, that I wasn't even aware of it. And I thought this comment actually pointed it out to me, that there is a way of going through Rock Street to get onto Old Potts Way to avoid using the roundabout. But that's already in place. It's got nothing to do with this application.
I think we also need to make it very clear here is this establishment will need a license for the what you consider the antisocial hours in order to operate. Now, if there's going to be issues, obviously they'd have their license taken away. And also, we need to make it very clear, this site isn't immediately adjoining any residential development. I asked James pointed out to you where the nearest dwellings are in the bottom of the screen, in the centre there. That is the terrace of houses they're referring to. On opposite side of the road leading into town to the site is Farr and Harris business. So it's mainly in a commercial area immediately to it. And we need to also point out that one of the 3 restaurants, when they were originally granted planning approval, was for it a takeaway. And that site, is it Nando's?
The site you're referring to is Nando's
Yeah,
here. It used to be Burger King.
Yeah.
And had a drive-through. And
Now, this is what I wanted to point out. Look at the distance of Burger King to those dwellings, where the Burger King was, and how the proposal subject to this application is actually further away.
Okay, let's hear a bit more from the councillor. So we've got Councillor Hunt first, and then Stephen Davenport, and then Alex Wagner, and Mike Blusher at the back.
I have to say, I'm a little less worried. I think there is a safety valve on this, which is the need for the licence from midnight till 5 p.m. If it attracts antisocial behaviour, that licence could very easily be withdrawn. I'm also less worried about any rat runs through residential areas from people trying to avoid the roundabouts at night, because at night those roundabouts are virtually empty. So there is absolutely no reason why you wouldn't take the main road in there. There's no reason to drive down a residential street with cars parked on both sides when, you know, there's no traffic at the roundabouts anyway. I think post-COVID as well, from my view, there was a need for people, doctors, nurses, other emergency people and other people to be able to access food at all different times. I don't think for 1 minute we're going to go back to where we were, but I don't have an issue with 24-hour opening, and if it's not successful for them, I'm sure they won't be employing staff to cook and to serve the food if there's not enough people going through that. So it will be, you know, on a demand basis, really. I am a little bit more concerned about the loss of trees. We are losing considerably more than are going back in, but I suppose if we employed a professional tree officer who's very arboriculturally minded, and he is satisfied that the replacement trees are of better value and probably better for the environment than the existing ones, which we've heard, I think it was 17 are coming to the end of their tree lives anyway, then that wouldn't be a reason that we could object to. I would be personally happier, and I hope they take it on board if they could replace with a few more. But I don't think that's something we could refuse this application on, because our tree officer, who is anybody who's met our tree officers knows that you know, they really are tree huggers in the literal sense of the word, and you know, they don't like losing trees if they're not being replaced. So I personally don't have an issue with some of the concerns that have been raised.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Davenport.
Yeah, the only thing I've got to mention is on this again, and I don't disagree with this application at all, except the time, the opening times. You've got to put a closing on it. You'll just get a flood of everybody else around wanting to mirror the opening times of this. So I think we've got to do everybody a favour, including the other businesses, and put a time limit on it.
Okay, Councillor Wagner.
And that's pretty much the point I was getting to make. I think that knowing that area quite well, I do accept the point. I think it was in Councillor Dartnell's submission that it will change the nature of that area. So I think if they're effectively sharing a parking sort of area between Cineworld and between the McDonald's, then it could actually have a reasonably close impact on bits of Rock Street and Rees Street, though I don't think it's going to be major. That said, whether there's a particularly good planning reason as opposed to a licensing reason to object is probably another thing. And I think that, you know, leaving it to licensing and to if there is antisocial behaviour issues, step in might be a wiser way to go forward. But I do accept the case that it probably will have a negative impact on the immediate vicinity there. And I do get why 115 residents have written in about it, because opening a 24-hour restaurant, you know, not very far from your house in a reasonably large estate in Reebrook probably is going to be a cause of concern for a lot of people.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Isherwood.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my concerns are more on the environmental impact. Obviously, it's a drive-through, so it will be generating additional vehicle movements. And those vehicles, when they're using the drive-through, will be circulating at very low speeds with their engines running. And as we've all seen, drive-throughs have become extremely busy lately, and so those areas can just be sort of permanent fume producers and really lower the air quality in the local area. So I was just wondering if that's been taken into consideration, and what officers might have to say if there's any mitigating factors.
Do you want to understand?
Sorry, I thought you had.
No, Councillor Burgess wants to ask a question now, so if we'll bring Jane in a moment for that answer. Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually going to speak on this application. The concerns of the residents make no sense. The McDonald's and meal breaks don't take 24 hours. It works quite happily. It's a lot closer to residential houses on the real estate. We don't get any complaints, and most complaints from we don't get any antisocial behaviour issues up there. The McDonald's in Battlefield is also on 24 hours. Again, it's close to residential areas, and again, there are no complaints from that area. This is not going to set a precedent and have every restaurant in the street going up 24 hours. They open for when they can make money. McDonald's is open 24 hours a day because it can make money, and that's my only comment.
Okay, Councillor Towers, have you any comment?
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, I've just reflected on those two things really. The opening hours, and I think that has been answered really by what has just been said. And the other one with the tree planting, we need trees. Queen's canopy the lot, you know. But I'm reassured. I've had contact with the tree officer just recently, actually, in our part of the world, and in paragraph 6.3.5, it talks about the tree officer having no objection to the application and does not consider that more tree planting is required to compensate for the loss of these two category trees, 14Cs and 6Bs. So I'm reassured. So I think on balance, I'm neutral on this one, and I think market forces will determine the use, and therefore, and if licensing can impose sanctions should they need it, well, so be it. That's what I sound.
Excellent, thank you. There was a few comments that Mike Isher would raise, which I don't know whether you want to answer, Jane, about ecology. One of you.
Ecology and pollution.
Well, I can't comment. The council's highways don't object. You'll notice there's a condition attached with regards a litter management plan. Condition number, you've got an issue there, Jane. Condition number 8, is it?
Yes, right.
Condition number 8 covers litter and immunity. Also, we noted the concerns about the trees, and we have gone back to the on that issue. And I noted one of the local members who spoke acknowledged that. And also, I need to add, these are not veteran trees we're talking about. They're relatively young trees in relation to the development of this, because it's not that old of a retail site that's been constructed, and in fact we've got photographs showing the trees if Jane would like to so that it's clear to you what trees we're talking about. And it's clear our tree op team do not raise any objections.
I actually spoke to the tree officer and said, did she want more trees, because obviously there appears to be less trees replacing the trees to be removed, but she says because they're lower quality and some have got to be removed anyway, she thinks that what's proposed is more than satisfactory compensation.
Carry on.
I'm in the wrong one.
There's one.
Yeah. So they've only got to go. The footprint of the building is a slightly different place, and to make way for the drive-through facility. Yeah, that's the landscaping proposals. The car park is actually owned by the same company, and both, whether you're visiting the restaurants, the Dragon King site, the proposed site, Nando's and Cinema, you can park anywhere. The red line is only this strange shape because of the alterations they're making to the road markings to point you in the direction to feed through to drive-through. So there's two landscaping proposals. So some of the tree planting is going to be to the front of the site in front of the cinema, but it's all in the same ownership, so it's within the land outlined in blue rather than red.
That's excellent. I hope the signage is clear, because last time I went to drive-through, I went through the exit. I'm afraid it didn't do me much good. It was a quiet night, so there was only people laughing at me, so I researched quite quietly.
You're used to that. There's
Councillor Hunt, and then Councillor Shwood, and I think then we'll draw it to a close then.
I think, yeah, I mean, Jane didn't give a huge answer on the issue that was raised by Councillor Isherwood about cars sticking over while they're there, but she has pointed out that the highways officer hasn't expressed any particular concerns on this. I appreciate what other councillors said about the shared use of the car park, but I know in the old days when I had my kids at home, we used to go and we'd go and have a Chinese first, and you know, anyway, it's there was a shared car park back then as well. I think the local neighbours, residential areas are concerned about the 24-hour opening, in particular, people accessing the streets late at night, very early in the morning. I don't think that is going to be an issue because, as I said earlier, the roundabouts are not congested at those times. And I think, to be honest with you, you know, this for me would create a sort of an island of, you know, exactly what it's supposed to be. You can go and access different types of food there. You can go to the cinema. As for precedent setting, you know, for those of us who've been on the committee for long enough, we understand that there is no precedent. Any one of the other businesses, if they felt that it was commercially viable, would be putting in applications to sell for 24 hours a day, but would be having to seek the use of a license to be able to do that. And as I said earlier in you know, what I was saying, I do honestly believe that actually that creates a safeguard that is required for local residents. So all of that said, I'm going to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mike Isherwood and then Councillor Towers, and that will be it then. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was just wondering I'm surprised that more attention isn't given to air quality around drive-throughs, especially when they are within sort of more or less town centre locations. So I would have liked more information on that before we give consent.
Okay, Councillor Towers.
Yeah. On that point, I've obviously consulted regulatory services who comment on things like noise or air pollution, and they have made any concerns. Similarly, highways have. I mean, even if there wasn't a drive-through there, there's car parks, you have got to access the site. You've got a choice. You can either arrive by car, by cycle, by on foot, and there is a bus service as well. So there are, a variety of means of accessing the site. But I appreciate, yes, drive-throughs is obviously you use your car. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Towers.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate your point there. But the thing I just wanted to add to the conversation was the government's pushing for electrification of cars, and this will obviously reduce any fumes anyway. That's some years down the line maybe, but what would the intensity of car usage with fossil fuels as to happen in the future?
Okay, excellent. Yeah, from my point of view, I think Vince spoke very well in his first summation. I think the licensing will pick up any bad activities that happen during the night. If they are causing a nuisance, then the licensing department will shut them down. I think they'll probably find themselves that they will be that busy. They've got Melbourne, it's not far away to do a drive through at night, so there's plenty of competition there to go elsewhere, and I don't think that'll be a problem. So at the moment, we've got a proposal by Councillor Hunt to propose it. Does anybody want to second it? Got a second of Councillor Burchett.
Just quickly, just to confirm that proposal with the amended condition as put forward by officer. Yes, thank you.
Okay, do you want to, should we run through?
Yep. Name them. I'll go through the list and just confirm whether you're for or against the proposal. Councillor Burchett.
For.
Councillor Davenport.
For.
Councillor Alner. For. Councillor Hartin.
It's not here.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Isherwood. Against. Councillor Towers.
For.
Councillor Ledner.
Abstain.
Councillor Jones.
For.
That motion's carried. Thank you. So we shall move to item 7, another exciting one that is owned by the council, so we need to come to this committee. We've got the superstar principal planning officer back in the hot seat.
And I'm superstar. You're back with now.
Yeah, and the councillor for Buncome's back in the room.
Thank you.
So when you're ready for them.
Sorry, those two vans got popped on the end and they don't belong to you. So we put you back to where you need to be.
They won't let me go any further down.
We found the principal planning officer's limitation, I'm afraid.
Don't take long.
I think exactly best with the presentation.
So just for clarity, it's the proposed telecoms shelter on the car park at Bainbridge Green, Shrewsbury. Planning application 22/01506/FUL. So take it away, Mr. Mullin.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, this application is made in full and proposes installation of a telecoms shelter, security fencing and associated works on Palmer Car Park at Bainbridge Green in Shrewsbury. There are no updates on the application. And as the chair has pointed out, this application is brought to committee because the development is in connection to land in the ownership of the council, and the application does not relate directly to a statutory function requirement. Application site is outlined in red. There's a clearer picture, and the development site is here, alongside existing electric substation, and this obviously being the car park in a primary residential area. It's a small building in with proposed plans now for shelter, small in scale, 2.72 meters high to the apex, covering an area of 2.36 meters wide and 4.676 meters long, as set out in paragraph 6.22 of the officer's report. Next plan is an indication of the security fencing, which will be 1.8 meters high and to be finished in a dark green colour. Now follow some photographs of the site.
That's the approach.
That's the approach to the car park. Here, there's the site where there's a car park in at the moment.
No, the site's beyond that. That's the access road to the car park.
Beyond there,
Yeah.
is it?
Go to the next slide. And it's at the end of there.
There it is. Here, isn't it, Jane?
Yes.
That's right. And that's a wider view of the car park. The application site development consists of car parking, as I said, alongside the substation, and it's in Baines Green, which is a residential area in the northern part of the town, and the development is in order to house telecommunications equipment which will support the provision of improved broadband to these local dwellings. The loss of the one car parking space is considered acceptable with consideration to the overall use of the car park, and the space forms part of, and it is noted, Shropshire Council Highways raised no objections. The Town Council also supports the application, and there have been no objections received to the proposal. In conclusion, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions as set out in Appendix 1, attached to the report, and the informative note as set out in paragraph 2.2 of the officer's report. The case officer, of course, sitting in front of me. Thank you. That concludes my presentation of this, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. I don't think there's too much to debate. So if anyone's got any, Mike should want to have a go, and Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. I was just wondering, with the proximity to the houses, will there be any noise emanating from this unit, fans and cooling equipment?
You want to?
I would.
Yes. Right. No, I'm not aware of any issues raised by our regulatory services, who would be the consultants who would comment on this application. They have a list of the applications, and they have not come back with any negative comments.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Well, so it's not charity really to say that, you know, it hinges around the loss of one car parking space. As long as it's not the one where the only car in the picture is parked, it shouldn't be too much of an issue, I wouldn't have thought. And I think these units are not like transformers, like the ones you've got there, for example, which probably do make a little bit of a noise. I think they're relatively silent, even when they've got cooling fans going. So I mean, it's a good thing. We need better connectivity in Shropshire. This is going to provide it. I'll move to recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And second, Edward Towers, like to second it. I presume it's going to be unanimous, or did you want to do the boring thing and go through the list?
Interrupt the opinion, it's going to be unanimous. We just do the vote.
So again,
Interrupt the opinion, it's going to be unanimous. We just do the vote.
is it going to be unanimous? Anybody not fancy voting for this? It's going to be unanimous, is it? Everybody vote for it, please. Steve's down for sleeping, but he's unanimous. So it's unanimous. So thank you for that, everybody. Nice and quick through that one. So now we've got the appeals, which
Bit of a mixed bag.
Mr. Molyneux would like to enlighten us on how he's failed or how he's won.
No, not
On
really.
each one.
But not really. I've got no comment really. Only they are what they are. You'll see there's a number being submitted. keep with the ones that have been determined. The first one is of interest. That was a member recommendation decision contrary to the officer recommendation, and it's subsequently been allowed on appeal for holiday lodges at Hinstock, which was brought, was it last autumn, to committee? Actually, time goes. Anyhow, that's one to note. And then we've also at officer level through the scheme of delegation to the prior approval mechanism from agriculture to residential. There's an appeal being allowed for one of those bonds, which I find a very interesting read into how the inspector come to conclusions. I don't necessarily share her opinion. However, that one was allowed, and in the final one that was dismissed is a gypsy pitch retrospective, which was a hearing which took place in Osler Street with our planning policy colleagues, and the inspector's gone along with the council's decision on that one and dismissed it.
I see from the one at Instock, the 10 caravans, that the full award of costs was against the council. What sort of figure were we talking about? Did we know that?
It was. Let me make it clear. The costs application was dismissed.
Yeah.
They were not successful with that,
Okay.
so they wouldn't have got to the figures. That they'd be putting them in now if it had been allowed. But it was a subjective application. It came to committee. Quite rightly so. And my attitude is it's been allowed, and I accept the.
It's not like we're in daylight, absolutely right, is it?
If you'd been completely out of order, we'd have had what costs voided against us. We never.
Okay. So, thank you for the excellent work you do, Philip. So the date of the next meeting is on the 21st of June at 2 o'clock, which is Tuesday as usual. So thank you everybody for coming, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming along. Thank you, Chair.